Hey guys, Brian from Better Chess Training, and in this video we're going to be discussing this position, and we're going to be talking about defending and doing some calculation and some figuring out. Okay, so if you haven't seen this yet from my community post a few days ago, then pause it and see if you can figure out Black's best line of play. Okay, well, just as a little background, this position comes from a tactical problem, but it's the tail end of the problem. The initial part of the problem involved winning this rook. There was a rook here that I won through some tactics, and then white plays rook to h3 with this threat. And so what is the threat? I'm just going to show you real quick. I'm just going to make this move here with the bishop. This is not the correct move, but basically the idea here is queen takes h7 check, king to f8, and then queen to h8 mate. So let's go back. The thing that we need to look at here before we just start coming up with moves is we have to come up with ideas. So we know the threat. It's queen takes h7 check. Now, our first thought is, can we defend this? And the answer is no, because the queen cannot defend this because these pawns are in the way and there's no other piece that can come over to help in defense. Secondly, we can try to move the target, and that would involve something like h6. So we're going to definitely take a look at that. The other one would be to move the king, like to try to run away with king to f8, and some variations on that. On that same vein would be giving the king an escape square. So moving this rook either along the 7th rank or over to e8, with the idea that after this queen to h7 check, we go to f8 and then over to e7. Okay, so we have a bunch of ideas here and a few candidate moves. Now, the first one we would look at here is h6. Why is that? Because all of the other candidates involve giving up the h7 pawn. And so even though one of those might be the correct solution, we should look at the ones that don't give up the h7 pawn right away. Okay, so let's take a look and let's examine h6. So after h6, then a natural follow-up would be g to h6, right? To keep this, to keep our attack going. Okay, and after g takes h6, we would see fairly quickly that g takes h6 maybe not the greatest move. Now, of course, initially you might think, well, after queen takes, rook takes, you know, I gave up a pawn, but now my king is a little safer, and I'm still up a lot of material. The problem with that is that after queen takes, or after g takes h6, then white has a very powerful move here with f6, blocking the queen from, it's attacking the rook, of course, but more importantly, in this case, it's blocking the queen from defense here. Okay, so basically, black's going to be giving back material. For example, really, he has to get his king out. If he moves his rook, say here, then we have a mating attack here with queen takes h6, and pretty much it's going to be mate. We're threatening mate here, so if we take here, then of course we have queen to h8 mate. Okay, let's go back. So of course, king to f8 avoids the mate, but we give our rook back here, and it is winning for white. Okay, so let's go back. So we cannot play, after g takes h6, we cannot play this. Now, some of you may have thought right away, well, I can play g6. And actually, this came up in a master game. I'm not sure which one. I'll have to look up where, I think it was a Caruana game, where he used his opponent's pawn. And it's not a uncommon move, use his opponent's pawn to block for him. And that's what we can do here with g6, and now h7 check, and the king can just sit right here, and now this h file is blocked off. Now, white can continue, of course, with f6, and then after rook to e6, attacking this twice, but also, just in case, giving this f8 square for the queen. Then, after queen to h6, threatening mate, then we can just take here, our back rank is covered, and g6 is safe. So, this definitely would work. Let's take a look. We are up in material, and even the queen can maybe get some compensation here by taking here, but if we look at it, let's take a look at the material. Black is up the exchange, as well as, well, black is up the exchange and is on the move. So we're going to be, this pawn is very weak, so black can play something like queen to f4, wanting to trade. Queen moves out of the way, and then black can just reposition his pieces, start to bring his pieces back in here. Okay, so this would be a good line. Now, so if we go back and we see that h6 is good, we can just play it, of course, but we might want to see, do we have anything better? And let's take a look here. Now let's explore the idea of the king running away. Okay, king to f8, queen takes h6, king to e8, and the problem here is f6. Okay, this counter strike here is, of course, attacking this rook, and after g takes f6, g takes f6, and if the queen takes, okay, if the queen takes, then white has queen to g8 check, and then after the king moves, gets his rook back. Okay? Let's go back. If the rook moves, then we still have some trouble here with queen to g8 check, king to d7, queen to f7 check. And so very dangerous here for black. For example, king to f6, then we have this discovered check. And so, and of course, going to the back rank will lead to mate as well. Okay? So this line does not look so good. So running away with the king is not good. If we try to, one of the moves I thought was promising was give back a pawn, but now we have this escape square. But the problem here is queen to h7 check, king to f8, and here we have a couple ideas. We have this f6 move, which threatens mate here. So after taking, we have rook to h6, which is going to win this pawn here. Of course, now this pawn is pinned. But actually, after I analyze, so that's what I initially analyzed and realized that this wasn't good. But even more powerful is right here, rook to h6. And then if g takes h6, f6 with an unstoppable mating threat, because now basically this rook deflected this pawn. Kind of a nice little combination there. So you see this idea, by the way, with this f6. This is something that, this is one reason why you do combinations. You see these patterns, but you could also see them defensively, that this would be the idea that would happen. This is why it's good. Laszlo Polgar, of course, the father of Judith Polgar, Susan Polgar, and Sofia Polgar, wrote that huge book, and I should have brought it down here for the video, but it's like this thick, 5,334 problems and games. And his last section of his book are a bunch of attacking games with combinations with sacrifices on g3, f7, all of those stock sacrifices that you should have in your arsenal. And when you know them from the offensive side, you could see them here that this f6 move is a very common pawn lever in order to break open the king side and be able to do that. So that's why you study both offense and that's why you study these games both for offensive reasons as well as defensive reasons. Okay, let's get back to the analysis. So the idea now, when you see with the rook to e8, the same idea with rook to e5, very similar combination, queen to h7 check, and then we have this idea here of f6. Okay, it's a little different here because rook to h6, which we talked about before, doesn't quite work anymore because g takes h6, and then if we try this f7 move, well, the king can just move here because the rook is not blocking, okay? So this actually would work too, but f6 is the killer. And actually, after g takes f6, we have g6 in this case, okay? Again, threatening here, and then of course, if g takes h6, queen to h8 check, and if the king tries to run, we have rook to h7 check, king to e6, then bishop to h3 check is looking very dangerous. If we go here, for example, then simply threatening queen to f7 mate here. This is a mating attack, and it's going to be dangerous. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning because I know I threw a lot of analysis at you. When we first see this position, we have to see the threat, and then we have to come up with our ideas. It's not possible to defend h7, so we have moved the target with h6. We also have running away with the king with king to f8, and then we have a way to give the king an escape square with rook to e8, rook to e5, and actually let me just show you this one as well. Rook to d7 with a similar idea, but again, does not work out. King to h7 check, king to f8, and then this f6 idea, we won't go through all of the analysis, but it's a very similar idea that we saw before with g takes h7, and then rook to h6 coming in here. Okay, so the answer, of course, is h6, and I hope you guys all got that. The idea behind doing my other thought here behind doing this video is to encourage you to look for these opportunities to study these positions in your own games, as well as, like I said, at the tail end of these tactical problems, because sometimes especially in master games, there's often, it's often not just, oh, you win material with no compensation. Sometimes these combinations give your opponent, in this case, a powerful attack, and you have to be able to stop it. So if you found h6 before we went through this, congratulations. If you saw some of these other ideas, see where your analysis went wrong, if you didn't pick the correct move, and try to learn from it. Okay? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know in the comments, do you enjoy when I put up the position a few days ahead of time, give you a chance to analyze and then try it out, and then I put these solution videos up? Let me know if you like that. Also, let me know if you enjoy those defensive tactics. I have a few more of those positions that I've discovered in my personal analysis of my games and tactical problems. And if you enjoy that, I can try to put those more often on the channel. Also, just want to give a sincere thanks to my patrons. I really appreciate your support. It helps me to be consistent with these videos and to try to do my best to make it as enjoyable and educational as possible. Anyways, good luck with your chess, and I'll see you soon.